Hello and welcome once again to Baked Beans Garage, where for the first time in 2.5 years on this channel about cars, I actually drive a car. This here's my dumpster fire GTI that I'm supposedly done building. Here's a little refresher if you haven't seen the whole series. And as I mentioned in the past, I now have a 550-mile road trip to do. But I actually did not cut it close, and I have time to drive it a little bit before I just take off north. Now in the last video, I did hint and show you that the turbo kind of blew up. That's fixed now. That's pretty much the only thing that's changed. Surely I will not regret $160 turbo. I also had to get one of those jelly intakes to make it fit. And to plug the PCV valve, I found something that worked pretty well. Anyway, it is a KO4 instead of the original KO3S, and I didn't change anything with the fuel and the tune. It'll probably be fine. I'll just keep an eye on that fancy new boost gauge. Anyways, car's not getting any more done, so let's do something. And I will admit to being rather nervous about this. If you've been following the series, you know how the last time I drove this thing went. But also because the last time I did a maiden voyage in this thing, after I did the 1.8T swap the first time, one of my CV axles kind of exploded because I did it wrong. Now that shouldn't be an issue this time, but I suppose we'll find out. Well, first thing I notice is the recirc valve definitely sounds different since I have changed the intake. Also, it's pretty loud, but that's not new. And I don't dare make the extra spicy sounds yet. All that's in the tank is 87 because that's what I had. The first thing to do is to stop and put some 93 in there. Also, I was hardly paying attention, but it is driving straight. If you'll remember how I did the alignment, it was very not professional. But I'll take that as a win. The wheel isn't perfectly centered, but I believe it's exactly as much off as it was before, so I'll take it. Oh, well, at least it's possible to heel toe now. Give me one moment. Well, I guess if I break it this far from home, I'm already getting a toe anyway, so I guess I'll just continue on. I do detect a bit of a warm smell. I'm sure that's fine. Oh, and here's one thing the car hated before is spirited right turns when the CV axle crashed into the subframe. That wasn't very spirited, but I know it would have done it before. So the car did great on the maiden voyage, although it does now occur to me that I've never actually filmed myself driving before, so you may notice my videography skills are a little lacking in this area. But if you've been here since the beginning of the Volvo build, you know it'll get better. Just be patient. So you'll just have to deal with this super flattering angle and my lapel mic not at all being able to cope with the noise of the car. But that's enough about my skill issues. The car is pretty good. It drives straight. I seem to have done a close enough job with the alignment. It is now possible to heel toe, what with the pedals in the correct spot. Clutch works. The slop is completely gone out of the steering and it just feels better. You'd imagine. It's all new underneath. The only thing that hasn't gone exactly to plan is it still won't rev past 4,500 RPM. Now, I think it's an issue with the two-step because this eBay-tuned ECU is supposed to two-step at 4,500 RPM, so there may be an issue with the clutch pedal switch. But I do know that earlier ECUs, like an ABA, will limit the revs to 4,500 if it doesn't see the vehicle speed sensor signal, so I have unplugged my speedo cable and plugged in the original Mark IV speed sensor. I had left the connector in the harness because I kind of thought this would be an issue, and now it is. Doesn't really matter because that didn't fix it either. But other than that minor snag, it was completely boring and uneventful. So I just kept driving it. I drove it to work all week last week and nothing happened. So now I've done about 400 miles in the car and it doesn't seem like I'll need to make any tweaks before the road trip. But I guess having road tested it so thoroughly before the road trip makes it a little less entertaining, but you're not as nervous as me. Speaking of being nervous, I have assembled the contingency kit for this trip. If I have it, I won't need it, right? So all that junk plus a bunch of other stuff because I'm moving. You may notice that spare wheel looks quite nice. I have had this spare Mark III wheel for many years now, but I have now finally decided that it is just a little too dangerous looking for my liking. So I just bought the cheapest 14-inch tire I could find on the Jungle website. So it's just a matter of taking that to a shop and getting it mounted, right? Nay, nay. If you're a returning viewer, you'll know I hate myself, so we gotta do this the fun way. But I don't have a practical way to balance it, so I don't care. It's not getting balanced. But I did go to a salvage yard and find the foam organizer thingy for the spare tire from a Mark IV. So now I have a jack and a lug wrench nice and tidy in there. And with the innards of the car ready, I figured I'd do my due diligence and jack it up and kind of wiggle some things around just to make sure nothing's fallen apart yet. I don't know what I expected. All of it's brand new. You watched me put it together. If you haven't, watch me put it together. Anyways, the car is ready, so I suppose it's time for a road trip. But actually, before I leave North Carolina, there is one interesting thing here. I am near Goldsboro, North Carolina, and just north of Goldsboro, there is a little town called Eureka. And in the middle of Eureka, there is a very interesting plaque. Although I do think nuclear incident is underselling it a little bit. In 1961, the USAF kind of almost nuked itself. A B-52 crashed and very nearly blew up the whole state. But because of one out of something like 9 safety devices, it didn't explode. That is why I now live in a house, not a crater. And although unfortunately the whole crew of the B-52 did die, there was no accidental nuclear explosion. And according to all accounts, it's still there in a field somewhere around Eureka, North Carolina. They didn't want to dig up the whole bomb, so they just went down, took the core out, and then bought the land on top of it. So we don't know exactly where it is. I'm sure someone does. So maybe if you're a nerd such as myself, go on the internet and look up the Goldsboro nuclear incident if you want some details. And finally, before I get on the road, something you may have already noticed, this lovely specimen. Wrapped around this lovely specimen is my new shirt. There's a link in the description. It is screen printed on a fairly heavyweight t-shirt. Very luxurious, very high quality. Buying such a shirt is known to have some side effects like curing depression. It's an effective treatment for athlete's foot. It can balance the pH in your pool. It'll prevent eyelashes from getting stuck in your eye. And it will make you smell vaguely of a chinchilla. So if you're interested in that, maybe go give me some money. They're not too expensive. Anyways, it's about 4 a.m., so let's get on the road. I was lying when I said that. It was still yesterday. It is now 4 a.m. Do wish I had a dome light. There, 576 miles, 8 hours and 43 minutes. In a car that doesn't sing an F sharp at highway speeds. Let's get into it. it goes without saying that I'm more than confident in the car's ability to make this trip safely. What makes me nervous is you may notice that I'm in the US, and everyone here very much likes to drive their 3-ton suburban assault vehicles at Mach Jesus. I don't think I've ranted about cafe standards on the channel yet. I'm sure we'll get there. My point is, I'm just a little guy. I'm just a nugget hanging out in the slow lane. All the other cars are very large. Anyways, I'm about halfway there with no spurious smells or sounds to report. It's kind of just working like a normal car. But yeah, driving a sardine can in modern American traffic is a bit nerve-wracking. My entire safety philosophy revolves around just not getting into an accident, because if I did, that'd be quite bad. And you may be able to tell from earlier that the headlights actually illuminate the road now. That's a new feature. Last time I swore off of LED bulbs because the beam pattern was just about useless, but I figured I'd try it again with these different housings, and it actually puts the light where it's supposed to. And I'm not getting other high beams flashed at me, so that's a pass. Anyways, I will continue hanging out in the slow lane for many more hours. Probably find a big truck to hang out with. I like them because they're predictable. Light work, no reaction. So yeah, that was completely uneventful. I'm sure glad I spent 2 weeks being nervous and collecting parts for that trip. The oil pressure gauge started doing something a little weird towards the end, but meh, problem for later now. But I am here, and so are all the hoopties, so I guess it's time to formally welcome you to the new home of Baked Beans Garage. Now, it doesn't look like all that much, but don't worry, we'll get to it. Let us start with all of the rust outside here. The first thing we see are some little tractors. You'll recognize 2 of them. You won't recognize one of them. That little guy is a 1958 Boland's Ride-O-Matic. It'll be shiny again. It's a future project I'm pretty excited about. And of course my Gravely 8179 and Boland's 1886. Those are both kind of parts tractors. I'd like this one to run again, but it has no engine and it's quite bad. But that's enough about those. You probably haven't even watched the tractor videos. Anyway, moving further this way, we will find my beloved Rotten Banana, my 1980 Volkswagen Rabbit pick-em-up truck, now with the peel looking slightly more rotten. It's been like 2 years since you saw this thing. I kind of pulled the engine out and then lost all money and motivation. But don't worry, it's still here. I have some fun plans for it. But as I'm going to say a lot in this video, we'll get to it. Completing a lap of the garage, we will find one of the finest specimens of American engineering ever to grace the consumer market. That, of course, being my 1972 Boland's 10G. There's also some big orange turd here. Only thing I really care about is in the bed. There's a plow for this, for pushing stuff around. We'll get to it. This, don't worry, we're not going to see much of this. It's quite bad. Okay, finally, the fun part, inside. And I finally have an actual roll-up door, so I get to do one of those fancy garage door reveals. I stand corrected. Suppose we'll go in the boring way. Now I guess it doesn't look like much on the outside, but it is a little more space than I had before. Anyways, entry, please. I may have been a little misleading. That little garage is part of the baked beans complex, but here is where we'll be spending most of our time. It is a brand spanking new 30 by 40 steel building. Of course, I don't own it yet, maybe one day. We'll get to that. It is still a bit of a mess from me moving in, but we can still have a look around. The first thing you might notice is that that end of the shop is nice and bright, but it's still kind of dark over here. Since the building is new, I got to make some creative decisions, and I'll freely admit to having seen it on Vice Grip Garage where the back end of the shop is all dark, but the front is nice and bright. There's just two separate sets of lights. But that also illuminates some new things that we haven't seen before. This curvy German sports saloon is a 2011 Volkswagen CC. Of course, it's in my shop, so it's very broken. It's the 2.0 turbo flavor. I'll give you one guess what's wrong with it. Yep. Personally, I've always been a fan of the styling of the CC, but you never seem to see a clean one anymore. I guess we still haven't, but I think it'll clean up quite nice. We'll get to it. This will be one of the first projects we see in the new shop. I'm going to do one big self-contained video explaining everything that's wrong with it, and then fixing it, one of those that pleases the algorithm I have seen a few examples of. So that should be quite a lot of fun, but you'll probably only see it the one time. Also in frame, we have my lovely new workbench. Now, if you've been here a while, you know that these Gorilla mitts don't interface all that well with the old carbohydrate foam, but I do need quite the beefy bench to mount this here vise. I got this from my pap. He got it from his dad. The patent on it says 1906, so it's probably pushing 100 years old. I haven't mentioned it on the channel before, but it is quite the sentimental piece. It outlasted its previous two owners. It'll outlast its current owner and the bench it's on. And speaking of the bench, I just threw some deck screws into some wood. It's not square, it's not level, but it's functional. There's something interesting back here too. Now, of course, I'm a chinchilla, so I use wood chips, but I'm told this thingy will be nice if humans ever come to visit. I will build a little wall around it for some privacy. Here's a sink, there's water out here, that's a big upgrade. And finally, the shop has its own dedicated breaker box. And you may be thinking that's an awful lot of breakers for two lighting circuits, some 220 and some 120 outlets. Suppose you'd be right. Awful lot of room to play around with in there. I'm sure we'll get to it. Looping back around, we have the parts department over here. I have no idea how I fit all this junk into that little space I had before, but it's almost corralled now. There's some fun stuff back here. Now you may recognize this here D24T as the one that came out of my white 760 parts car and the one that's going in to my 83 245. That'll be a fun build. And if you don't know what that is over there, I'm not going to say yet because I want that for a bit later. There's a cylinder head over there too. Do you recognize it? It's for a 2JZ, the floor 2JZ, because that's where the movers put it and my spine doesn't feel like moving that. I don't have a project to put that in yet, but I'm sure we'll figure something out. And if you're coming here from the Mark II series, you'll recognize that. That is the original 16 valver that, well, not original. The car originally was an 8 valve. Someone stuck that in there and it never ran. You may notice it has a 1.8T fuel rail on it. I'm not going to say anything about that. There's an extra 1.6 over there too. And to complete a lap of the nice shiny shop, we have nice shiny car. Now this is a rig that should need no introduction. And to get back outside, of course, on the front of the shop, there are 3 big old car holes. And as much as I do miss that big heavy DIY barn door I had in the old shop, these are quite nice. Observe, of course, I'm not that bougie. They're still manual, but lovely. Oh, that's a pretty easy segue. Over here, there's some more bricks. This one you've met, this one you haven't. They're both broken and rusty. This will be the next big project for the shop. It's going to get that D24T in there and a bunch of other stuff. Again, we'll get to it. This one's going to be pretty cool. On the other side of the shop, we have this lovely carport. There are some things here, some broken, some not. This is my E36. It's been in the background of a couple videos, but I haven't actually talked about it yet. It is a 96 328 IS, red on black, a very nice color combination. This used to be my daily many years ago, and it used to be very nice. It's not as nice anymore, and it's also broken. After 270,000 miles, the head gasket has finally gone, if you can believe that. And there's plenty of other cosmetic issues, but this will get a nice tidy restoration. The HT20 we've met before, haven't done anything with that because it keeps not breaking. We will be seeing a lot of the E36 on the channel in the future as soon as my wallet allows for it. The Bolins, maybe not. It's probably not going to break. Oh, now I done it. Anyways, we're still not done. But before we move on, I do have a confession. Rather a personal detail that has not yet come up on the channel. Now, if you're here, you probably know me for European stuff and Volkswagen diesels. And while those do fill a big part of my heart, there is equal space in my heart for the opposite. What is the opposite? I will let that speak for itself. Thank you. Now we can move on. This is my FB, my 83 RX-7. As you can see, it is a complete unmitigated dumpster fire. The only clean thing about it is the title, but mercifully it is the Southern car, so there are no gaping rust holes, but there still are rust holes, of course. I have some fun plans for this one. This will be another rather large project in the near future, once my wallet allows it again. But I don't think it's going to be staying a rotary. We shall see. And of course, something, don't put a piston engine in a Mazda RX-7. There is something to be said about a nice, clean original RX-7. They're quite the car, but this is my FC, and it's all of those things what I just said. This was my first big project car back when Baked Beans Garage was just my mom's garage. I found this in the woods. It had a blown up engine. I rebuilt the engine and did all the usual stuff. And now it's quite the rig. An absolute delight to drive, and it's been fairly trouble-free. This was my daily at one point. But with 220,000 miles on the clock, this is probably the third engine, it does have a few little cosmetic issues that we'll get to. But what makes this car very interesting is not only is it an FC that's completely unmolested, it's an early production FC, so it has a bunch of little weird things about it that are different from later FCs. Also, it is an absolute base model. There is not a single option on this car. It even still has the base 14-inch Steelies. We'll talk about that in the near future. I have a few ideas for videos on this. We'll be seeing a lot of it. But don't worry, it is staying exactly as it is, completely stock. And the last rig you have not been introduced to, the 82 Rabbit pickup, my beloved. This rig I found about 5 years ago. I think it was in a flood or something because the engine was all locked up with rust and there was a bunch of water in the transmission. That was pretty cool, but it's pretty easy to find a 1.6 core, so I just rebuilt an engine for it, and it has been absolutely perfect for about 40,000 miles. It has not enjoyed the trip to Pennsylvania. I think it knows it's back in the Rust Belt, because only now has it begun to leak oil and maybe coolant. But given how many miles I have put on it, it is now time for a timing belt anyway, and the steering is getting ever so slightly sloppy, so I have that box of stuff to rebuild the whole front end as well. This will be getting at least a few videos, I am sure. Also, we're in the garage now. You probably noticed that. Back out of the garage now. And as is necessary for any complete home, next to the little garage we have a little shed. In the little shed is the Gravely. If you haven't seen me restore that, maybe go watch that video. It's been quite reliable since I restored it. But the fuel pump finally gave up on me and it started leaking from the carb bowl, so I'm just going to throw some parts at it and keep running it. Anyways, I do believe that's the entire fleet. I will have to count again quickly. Yeah, that's all of them. Suppose I'll go back to the shop and yap some more. Again, moving, I'm doing my best with the continuity. Now in one of the upcoming videos, you'll watch me learn that this lip right here is a little unmanageable. So here's one of the 2x4s left from building the bench. And the only reason I didn't pull the GTI in here to begin with was to do that stupid gag. I hope you enjoyed it. Now there is one member of the Baked Beans fleet that was not going to be shown in this video. That of course is my boring normal daily driver, but that is the Banks car. Rather, it was the Banks car until about 10 minutes from the house on the very last trip north. So that was a fun surprise for me and the cats. Anyways, because of that, this has been my daily for another week with my rather long commute to work. And again, no drama. The oil pressure gauge is becoming even weirder. And although it is later, that is still a problem for later. Later. We'll get to it. That one we might not. So it should be no surprise that I'm not able to afford all this through what I'm making on YouTube right now. At the moment I have about 5,500 subscribers. So those of you that are here, I do love you. Thank you for your support. If you're new here and you want to see me succeed, maybe click the subscribe button, leave a comment, do all the things the algorithm likes. If you're feeling extra generous, maybe check out Patreon, buy a shirt. Video's not over yet, don't worry. But in the meantime, I'm only able to have all of this through some very heartfelt and dedicated help from many of my family members. Apparently they believe in me. But I am able to confidently say subscribe or my mom will be disappointed. But sincerely and from the bottom of my heart, thank you to those aforementioned family members. You know who you are. Although it is quite a lot, I do fear that a precedent has been set that I now have to live up to. So, suppose we'll see. Anyways, let's talk about some plans for the future and the present. The toilet definitely needs a wall around it. I will probably enclose that whole corner and the compressor can live in there eventually when I have shop air. As you'll see me learn next time, the lip and the gravel is a bit of an issue, especially for things that don't run. That looked a bit easy, but there is no HVAC of any kind yet. That hopefully won't be a big issue until the summer. I am now in Pennsylvania instead of North Carolina, so it does not get as hot as Satan's taint in this state, but it gets quite cold in the winter. But you may notice there is some insulation, at least a whiff. It's quite the upgrade from what I had, 0 in North Carolina. I am looking forward to that. Now some plans for the far, far future, if and when I have the money. Central shop air hooked up to the compressor, that would be lovely. Some electric garage door openers, if I'm ever real bougie, that'd be nice. The walls are still very barren. Before I go decorating, I do want some sheathing up so I can hang stuff and maybe paint some fancy colors, that'd be nice. The insulation, although present, is a little thin. I'll probably do some bat insulation behind it. There'll be a nice workshop renovation video, even though it's brand new. And eventually, we'll probably do a bowling alley, some alligator skin of some sort, maybe an elevator, maybe a loft. I don't know, I kind of just kept talking. That's going to be a nightmare to edit. This isn't actually the outro. I'm just going to walk this way and hopefully I figured something to segue it into later. And apart from a very sneaky barber that lives around here somewhere, my only real complaint with the shop so far is the bugs. On the outside, there's about 1 million of these box elder bugs. At least they stay outside. They're harmless, just a little annoying. And of course, it's Pennsylvania in the fall, so inside there are stink bugs, but again, not a big deal. And I have noticed at least one rather large species of beetle hanging about. Again, with the continuity, but I think you'll agree this gag was worth it. If you disagree, feel free to keep it to yourself. Anyways, it's a new week. As I mentioned, my daily got totaled, so I gotta get a new one. It's gonna be one of these. We'll find out in an upcoming video. But since this is a fleet update and the fleet has now grown, they're both bugs. They're both manual diesels. We'll get into them. But since they both need quite a lot of work and I need something to drive, the wagon's gonna have to wait just a little bit longer, but it'll get done, I promise. Okay, now I guess the video's over. If you're still here, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me yap. A bit of a new format. I didn't actually really do anything this episode, but I would like to do more videos of a similar flavor in the future. Suppose we'll see. Let me know if you want to see me build the room over there. I kind of suck at working with wood, but could be entertaining. I don't know. All the real YouTubers seem to make good videos working on their workspace. Maybe I could do the same. I'm still just a baby. Anyways, I'm very much looking forward to all of the shenanigans I'll get up to in here. It's going to be a good time. But for now, this has been Baked Beans Garage. I am a shiny new chinchilla, and I'll see you next time. I don't have an idea for a good outro gag.